I'm not a huge believer in sending a survey to people who haven't bought from you yet because they haven't expressed enough interest for you to invest that much time in them. I do think it's important to at least get a general gauge of this stuff might be appealing to new customers.
You do have to ask yourself, are you trying to introduce this product to try to bring in some new customers, or are you trying to introduce this product to sell more to the customers that you already have?
Email and SMS marketing automation. Now, is it the sexiest topic? We think so, but everyone might not agree. But if done right, is it one of the best ways to make more money for your store? 100% yes. It's one of the most effective ways to become more profitable on a daily basis. And that's why Ecom Growers is offering to build out your backend email and SMS automations for free until you start making more money from them. Trusted by over 100 7- and 8-figure brands, Ecom Growers has developed a simple yet effective system to turn more of your traffic into buying customers. And they're willing to build it out at no cost until they start producing more revenue for you. It's literally a risk-free investment. So head over to ecomgrowers.com, link in the description below, and schedule a call to reserve your spot before they fill up. Welcome to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Horowitz, and today I'm joined by my incredible co-host, Mark Arruda, to get into a special episode all about something that we care a lot about and we think is a lot of brands honestly do wrong, which is how do you actually introduce a net new product to your business, right? So you're scaling really well, things are really popping, sales are climbing, ad spend is going really well, your email list is really growing, the community is there, and you notice that you're having some success. You start asking yourself, what's next? So today we're going to break down our 4-step framework to really figure out what is that new product that you should introduce. How do you get into that new category? And then how do you make that successful to evolve your business? So Mark, I'm going to ask you the toughest question of all. You have one really hit product. How do you get into another one?
Yeah, I mean, tough question, right? There's a reason there's a full episode dedicated to this, because there's not just that straight, easy answer. There's the possibilities of, are we working with a entire new hero product? Are we working with a smaller upsell that's just going to get tacked on? Like, where are we going with this? So that needs to be figured out, obviously. The best suggestion that I could make to any company would be to find that product that fits with your audience. You already have this list. Your customers know, like, and trust you. Audience, community, if you have those type of things, then there's a good chance that you can introduce new things, whether slowly or at large scale. And it could just fit based off of the fact that your audience is already buying from you. They already have an account on your site. They already get emails from you. It's not like you're trying to make a new product and then run Facebook ads to a cold audience. So I think taking into consideration the audience that you already have built out and finding products that fit to them is probably going to make it easier for you to digest some of the problems that might come along with introducing new products.
Yeah, and I love that point, because something that really grinds my gears is, we are really successful in men 25 to 45, and now we just want women of the same age. So we'll just launch a new version of the product, spin up some ads, and it'll be really, really easy to bring them in, versus like, no, this is the audience that loves us, they buy a lot from us. How can we get more into their hands? So walk me through, I know you all have had at CVG over the years, a lot of evolutions of different product categories and different introductions. Like, how do you think about at a really high level, we're crushing it in this first product category. How do we now introduce something else that our customers will really love and will be really successful from an introductory sales perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to look at, let's say, more of like a major product, then obviously you want to be able to have a good source for that product. So whether you're able to go to your same manufacturer to just have them make this product, or go and find something new, that's going to be a big decision, because going to somebody new is going to take a lot more time. Going to a manufacturer or a source that you're currently working with is probably going to save you months, realistically. And as you'll probably learn as you try to introduce new products, there's mistakes that you may have made the first time around when coming up with your first products, or your first hero products, whatever it may be, in that maybe your margin wasn't quite right. Maybe it cost too much to ship. Maybe it was too large and it took up too much space in a warehouse. So these are the type of things that you might be thinking about when you're looking for a secondary product. You want to make sure that that margin is as good as possible. How high can you get that margin? Price it out. See where your customers are willing to spend. Kind of use them as that source to find the information that you need to see what is going to fit. And of course, you certainly want to always expect that this is going to take time. Nothing good ever happens quickly, especially in this current world with supply chains the way that they are. So expect that you will be working on a product that could very well take a year before it sees the light of day. So, don't go and forget your current business in the process. It's a complementary product. It's not something that's going to, you don't want it to hurt what you're currently doing to just try to bring it to life.
Yeah. And so there's two things that I really want to address in there that I think are so important is first, like you need to be really clear about what your goals are and what your intention is with the new product. And so the two major buckets that I usually like just to help think through this are what's going to be your game changer, like a huge new introduction that might become your new hero product, or what are you adding to the bag and are just like simple upsells? Because I think that decision is so informative of how many resources you deploy to it, how big of a marketing push you make, how much research you need to do to it. Everything requires all of those steps. But yeah, like do you go back to your current manufacturer? Do you have to go source a new one? How much marketing dollars, how big of inventory are you buying to test and launch the product? And so I think that is so important because let's be honest, everybody's insanely resource constrained and this stuff takes a long time to do, that you need to be really thoughtful about what you're introducing and not just throw stuff up on a website randomly just because it looks good.
Totally. I think my best suggestion would be if this is the first time that you might be working on something outside of your core product, if you've been kind of stuck on the same thing for a while, maybe you just work on those upsell products rather than trying to recreate what your brand sells or stands for. So like what you're mentioning there with smaller products, upsell products, those are a lot easier. You might be able to even white label some things and just throw it into a cart upsell and, increase your AOV based off of a $15 product.
Yeah. And so another framework that I like to use for that is kind of like filling out the customer's life in whatever your specific area of the business is. So if you're an apparel brand, right, like how do you fill out the closet? If you're a beauty cosmetics brand, how do you fill out the shelf of where they keep all of those products? At Lumi, what we always thought about, and the question I always asked is like, what else is in our customer's bag? Because we knew it was a highly mobile customer that wanted to use a lot of things on the go, and everything lived in her purse, clutch, whatever bag she was using. And so that's so important because as you do more research and as you can ask simple questions to your customers of like, hey, what do you usually use our product with? And there's going to be other things that might be low quality, might be cheap, might not really complement your hero product really well, that it's a really good inspiration source to figure out like, hey, we make t-shirts, people might want baseball caps, or people might want gloves, or people might want arm sleeves I think that's more like probably male fitness brand. But right, like it's something that is not crazy innovative. And you don't have to come up with something completely like out of the blue, but it really helps inform, like we could be making 9 million things, but what should we focus on? And that's kind of where I want to take this next of like, okay, let's say that we've whittled it down to a couple of products or a couple of product categories and ideas that we have. And I guess let's focus also more on like the big game-changing product, because I feel like there's not a ton of research that goes into the add-ons. Like what do you think is a good research framework to get down to okay, we have this really cool category, but this is the product that we want to go launch and test with?
I mean, it's nice of you to ask a question that you know the answer to, Jeremy. That answer is always to talk to your customers. So simplest form, just build out a survey. Things that have worked really well for us in the past is just building out that survey and putting it as a post-purchase survey. So this is a little bit more telling than just taking that survey and posting it to your socials. Because if you go and do that, whether it's a Facebook group, a fan page, whatever type of social that is, you're obviously opening that up to people that may not be your customers. So while that feedback is certainly good, it's not the most targeted. So you do have to ask yourself, are you trying to introduce this product to try to bring in some new customers that you may not have in your current audience? Or are you trying to introduce this product to sell more to the customers that you already have? if it's the second, if you are trying to have the easy win of just repeat customers that are already in your funnel, already in your ecosystem, then post-purchase survey is probably the best way, just because it allows you to weed out those people who have not already purchased from you. You will have a really fantastic list made up of all things of people that are already handing over their money to you because they know, like, and trust you. So surveying, polling, post-purchase, these are all really great things. I'm sure you're probably just waiting to say that you also want to email out that survey. Same thing. You can email it out to people, whether they have purchased from you or not. And that's, you could kind of segment that out and look at each one differently to try to decide on which angle you want to go with.
Yeah. And so my little variation on that and my preferred tactic that I always rolled out was you can automate a post-purchase, like a first buy. You can do it many times to keep it simple. Your first purchase, post-purchase email flow, you can just automate out a customer satisfaction survey and just have a section of that survey dedicated to what did you buy? How did you like it? And then your next questions are, what else do you want to see from us? And it's a great way to just have a running feedback of, we're a home goods company. We want to get into do we want to do decor or kitchen or these other areas? And it helps filter out okay, well, they're at least high level interested in this. And then the other second piece of that would be to spread it out is, well, I'm not a huge believer in sending a survey to people who haven't bought from you yet because they haven't expressed enough interest for you to invest that much time in them. I do think it's important to at least get a general gauge of this stuff might be appealing to new customers. I think it's actually more important to add onto that post-purchase your VIPs and automate something in that respect as well. All of the best product ideas I've ever introduced from a marketing perspective have come from a VIP survey where you do the exact same thing. You automate a flow. Usually, honestly, it's kind of like one of the best of either the first or second email in that flow is a link to the survey with some sort of reward for the VIP. And just having the same things this is what we're thinking about. What would you want to do? And also important thing that I think most people don't do because they don't want to do the work is a free form response in that survey of hey, what do you want us to make? And just let people say whatever they want. It's incredibly informative, and one or two really good ideas might be for a combination of 4 or 5 product ideas that you heard from in random places. And so and just tracking and knowing the difference of your non-customers, one time or maybe 1 to 2 time customers and your VIPs, just having all of that data and knowing where it all came from is extremely informative and can really be game changing when you start to whittle down what are those ideas to get to that right product for you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. You certainly want to try to avoid, if you can, in these surveys and this polling, to just give a multiple choice answer, because now you're kind of forcing what you believe is the best thing, and pretty much dictating the options that your customers have. So that might not really give you the best data that you want to work with. And I did just want to add kind of a fun thing that I've noticed recently. Kind of took me a long time to realize this, but I noticed that whenever we're kind of polling our audience on socials, that a lot of the responses that we're receiving back are often people's answers based off of the other answers that they're reading within the comments. So one person suggests one particular thing, and then it kind of goes off on a tangent where either you start seeing people suggesting that same thing or slightly different versions of that same thing. So it's the information that they've taken in has almost changed what it was that they would suggest. But when you pull it off of socials and you make it a survey, an email, or a post-purchase survey, you don't have customers having that input from other people. So you're getting their actual answers, and they seem to be a lot better. It's a lot better quality when they don't have that input from other people. So just another reason, in my opinion, to maybe, as fun as it is to have that really good engagement on social, if you want that strong feedback, my suggestion would be to keep it in a more private setting.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay, so this actually goes to an old school social psychology study where people were shown different length lines, and if 4 out of 4 people were the staged researchers and one person was actual respondent, if all 4 people said all of the lines that were clearly not the same length were the same length, the one person who wasn't a researcher would always agree because of social pressure. So I actually think my one slight variation to what you just said is I'd actually think about it strategically. If you want to do true, actual customer research, make it one-on-one, and you actually want to learn. If you want to position surveys and polls as an actual marketing tactic to get people to glom onto an idea once you've like validated it through real customer research, I actually think that social engagement is great because people may not be convinced that they actually want something. But as they see everybody pile onto that, they're like, oh my God, this is really cool. And you build that social proof to actually turn I don't want to say like it's not research, but like what seems like research to actually be just marketing collateral. And I think that is so effective of channeling people from the I could buy anything to I want to buy this. I think that's really effective. The other thing that I think is crucial in a similar trajectory is actual testing, right? So you go to a manufacturer, you want to introduce a new product, you probably have to do the internal like POC. Can we get something in our office that the internal team can test and wear or use for a little bit and see if it actually works? Then what I've always found to be effective is you do samples, and it goes to kind of like the friends of family, close people that you trust internally. They test it out, they try it. Then what we found to be super effective, especially back in the day, was rush ship the first part of your first order, like 50, 100 units, send those out to customers and VIPs, influencers, people in the press, and just don't say like time it so that your actual inventory is coming in a short enough time span that if anybody says anything, they're not like leaking something that you're going to do in a year from now. But intentionally do it, because what you'll do is you'll just get this natural organic buzz where those people will talk about it. And the important thing also is when you send that beta group your physical product, don't put any stipulations on it. Like just say, here, we love you as whatever the relationship is to the brand. We really appreciate your feedback and your thoughts, and just send them the product. We used to do this with Kim Kardashian, and this happened to us where it was a 6-month cycle, but she was so excited that she posted about it on social media, and it didn't break our site, but it just drove an incredible amount of traffic. And if you do that with press, if you do that with customers, like they just have this like engendering moment with the brand where they freak out. And so you can get a good gauge of, let me rephrase that. If they freak out, it's good research that you are onto something and it's going to be really popular. If you don't get a reaction, it's kind of like that it's your first marketing test and your last piece of research to give you that gauge of will this be successful or not. And what you should be able to do is throughout that entire process, really get a good gauge of, okay, 1, does it have all the features and products that we need? 2, are people actually going to like it and use it? And then it's honestly just marketing material. Like you can take those recommendations, turn it into ad copy, use it in your emails, really wherever you want. And then it just kicks off your sales process where then you put all of your marketing collateral behind it. And it's really like the full cycle of we took research, we really validated it out, and then that research turns into marketing, which then, I know, Mark, you love to talk about this. We can turn that marketing back into research to kick off the next cycle.
Yeah, everything you said there was perfect. I'd say you summed it up perfectly. The only things that I guess that I would add to that is maybe some caution around the testing, particularly with friends and family. Even with customers, you might not always get true feedback is basically what I'm saying. If you send it to friends and family, they might not, they might just love it because they're your friend and they're in your family. So try to really make it clear to those that are testing this that they're testing to try to help you deal with the hurdles before it becomes a hurdle. You'd rather deal with a potential situation with a friend or a family so that it can be fixed now, rather than waiting till hundreds or thousands of this product is out to somebody else. And the same thing when sending out products to customers. This is definitely a great tactic. Get a few dozens or 100, whatever you have the ability to do of that product. Find customers that you think would be the right fit for that product. Get it out to them, but let them know the importance of we know that you love our company, but please be truthful. Because if you do hear something, even if you're fully invested in this product's coming, you got 1,000 of them, they're overseas, they're coming right now. If somebody tells you something, if you hear something on repeat that doesn't sound great, that is not the end of the world, but knowing that ahead of time is very useful because you can be prepared for what that might mean. You might be able to make some adjustments. Maybe the price is not what you thought, because if there was something not 100% perfect on it, maybe you adjust the price to make that a little bit manageable for customers. Or on the flip side, the feedback comes back fantastic. You heard some call outs that you weren't expecting. That certainly happens. We've made products multiple times where we thought that the best things about it were not what the customers actually thought were the best things about it. So we've been able to take in that information and adjust pricing based off of that, or like you mentioned, adjust messaging, specific things to call out that may not have been on the top of your mind. I mean, we sell workout apparel, and when we first started selling it, we didn't understand the importance of having a squat proof legging. And when we sold our leggings, that was not one of our benefits that we called out until our customers gave us that information. And that for years became one of our top selling benefits that we never envisioned. So getting that information from customers is certainly extremely useful. And as long as you're making sure to listen to the bad as well as the good, that will lead to all the important things, whether that's messaging, marketing, quantities, price, all of those things matter.
Yeah, definitely. And one caveat I want to put on the friends and family feedback is your friends and family that you give the product to should be in your customer market. Like if you're a keto meat-based food product, don't give it to your friends and family that are vegans. Like really think through where does this feedback come from? Because I feel like people do that all the time and not all distinctions are that clear, but I can't tell you how many brands sell to young women and ask middle-aged men for feedback. And it's the objections you're going to get from the customers are going to be completely different. And the feedback you're going to get, and like what is valuable to them is going to be completely different, which I think is transitions us well into the next stage I want to talk about of kind of step 3 here of how do you actually turn that into a successful launch. And so we've covered launches a lot. We have a lot of episodes on this in the past, but like, we've done all the research. How do you think about that? We have, going back to that first core, really successful product, we've got to add what we think is going to be the future of the brand. Like, how do we make this launch really, really successful?
Well, so this would just be my opinion, and maybe you have a different take on it, Jeremy. But usually the way that I'm looking at it for my business is that I am never allowing a new product I'm never looking at it and saying that this is the number one future of our brand, because I never want to have the future of our brand or something that is going to lead us for the next year to be relying on, and it's unknown. I rather have what's working for us be our main thing, and I'd rather kind of work our way in, dip our toe in the water of this new product. So that would probably, for us, involve only getting a couple thousand units of something, obviously hyping it, teasing it out, getting as much excitement for it as possible, and then hopefully selling it out quickly. That is, in my opinion, the best way to not get stuck under inventory, to create a bunch of hype. It might create some downtime of a few months without that new product, but if you're doing things correctly, hopefully your audience is aware that that sold out quickly, and in turn, as usual, just creating more hype. And then as time goes on, when I introduce a new product, I don't look at it and say like, this year is going to be made by this product. I look at it and say, we are going to figure everything out in this year. And then maybe next year, that's when this product is going to make the big difference, because creating, sourcing, getting the feedback. I've made mistakes before where I've gone and I've created a product. I bought the inventory for the first release of that product, and then I bought the inventory for the second release of that product. And we had an issue with the first release, and that second release cost us about $40,000 when we scrapped the product because the first run of it was not done correctly. So I will not make that mistake again. Maybe some brands do have the ability to do that. I would rather not have that loss. I'd rather use the opportunity to build the hype and have it done correctly later on in the future.
Yeah. So I think to me, it's kind of two separate buckets and one piece of context before we dive into this. I think it's actually the most effective to intentionally oversell your first launch of anything. Like, just I know it's really tough from a financial perspective to drive a ton of marketing dollars and lose sales opportunities, especially when you're introducing something new and you've probably just dumped a ton of time, energy, and resources into R&D. But I think just seeing this pattern emerge over many brands over time, if you can really create like that insatiable demand where there's just not possible to buy that many units when you first drop a product, do it. Because I've rarely seen that ever be unsuccessful, especially when you can, and sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months, but like especially when you can bring that product back, get it into people's hands and really capture that sales opportunity. There is always that struggle of like, how long is the sales opportunity overall? And did we just miss like the gold mine here? But I feel like if you're doing everything right and you've researched the product properly, you can get to, and this is why that research phase is so important, is throughout that entire process, you should have a really good upper and lower bound of how much inventory you're going to launch with. And you're probably not launching a new product at the same inventory level as your hero product is today. And I mean, if you're that confident and you really like know that the inside track that it's going to work, like I'm not going to say don't do it, but it's pretty rare that ends up happening. Usually you're going somewhere around MLQs or MLQs plus a little bit. And to me, what's really important is just plow as much traffic, plow as much excitement through the site as possible. Intentionally try to sell it out, or intentionally try to sell out or get to as close to sellout as possible. Because then what you can do is you'll capture the emails, you'll capture them into SMS community, wherever you're really focusing on retention. And you have another just easy marketing event. Like you can just bring it back of like, hey, you'll like this. You couldn't buy it last time. Here it is. And it's that upfront effort might be tough and you need to really figure out like your cash flow to get from point A to point B. But there's nothing simpler than, hey, you wanted this, here it is again, to just drive people back to the site, especially if it's in an email, SMS cheap channel. I think the more important thing to think about with every new product that you introduce is it I call this the tier 1, 2, 3 framework. Is this a tier 1 product? Is this a tier 2? Is this a tier 3? And really aligning your resources accordingly. And going back to like what Mark and I were talking about earlier, where like, if you think that this is going to be the next major product, major thing that your brand's going to sell, put tier 1 resources, at least from a marketing perspective, behind it, and just try to do what, from an inventory perspective, you think you're confident that you're going to sell through. Tier 2 is probably not every channel, not the full weight of the company, but enough that you're going to sell through what you have. Maybe not that period where you're driving excess demand to what will need to come back later. And then tier 3, I would probably bundle a bunch of these together, or include a tier 3 with a tier 1 or a tier 2. And this is probably one of those more like throw in the bag type items or upsell, cross-sell items where it doesn't really require a big marketing push and you're just testing it out, probably white labeling or buying an MLQ to see if it works. Because also, if you've done the research properly, you're collecting data, realistically by launch day, depending on how well that goes, plus all of your data, you should have the confidence to place another PO or not. Like you should have enough at that point in time that assuming something crazy in either direction doesn't happen on launch day, you have a pretty good gauge of like, okay, we need to place a PO to restock in 6 weeks, or okay, shit, we probably should have placed a PO and we need it like next week, which unfortunately, if you're overseas, is never going to happen. But right, like you can gauge all of that to know this is where that really big inventory investment comes from. Because as a marketer, as tough as this is to say, it's a lot easier to write off a burned money on the marketing side than it is on the inventory side. It's a lot longer, it's a lot slower, it's a lot more painful process. And so really like breaking the framework out that way so that you're reducing your inventory exposure is the most important thing here. Like that is the name of the game, because that's where the cash conversion cycle of all of this comes into play. And so really thinking about your marketing structure to validate that is kind of like the last part of the research phase of this. Like you should be collecting that data so that in the future, you know, this is how much inventory we should be buying. This is how much we should be tiering up so that we don't get screwed holding whatever it is, 10,000, 50,000 units of this stuff that we can't move.
Yep. I mean, totally agree. There's nothing worse than trying to introduce a new product, having way too much of it. Maybe it does decent, but you overestimated what you might need. And as a result, you pretty much ruin that product. I've been there as well. Over investing in something when it's a tier 2 and not a tier 1 can certainly come back to bite you. Now you're in a situation where you're hanging onto that inventory for close to a year. You're probably having to discount it several times. The more times that you discount, the more difficult it is to move. So I think this is why we probably both suggest to take it slow, make it exciting, sell it out, use that as a benefit rather than the flip side of just being stuck with inventory that is just going to tie up your cash flow.
Yeah, and potentially ruin your entire business. So to get into the last part, I think what's most exciting and what's kind of one of the most challenging parts of this is how do you actually change your business? So let's assume that this new product was a massive hit. We're going to go buy a ton more PO. We're going to invest more in marketing it and really getting it out to more customers. Like, how do you think about, I mean, I don't know, you all must have launched 20, 50 products at this point. Like, how do you think about how it changes the underlying function of your business with every one of these new major products that you launch?
Yeah. So this thought right here is probably the whole thing that inspires this episode, I think, at least in my mind, is, the more that you sell, the bigger your company gets, the more difficult it is to probably bring in new customers. And especially now with Facebook ads being more difficult, more expensive, it costs more to bring in new people. So it's now more important than ever. We've been saying it for years, but it's more important than ever to be selling to the customers that you already have. And on the same note, having new products can open up new windows to bring in more customers a little bit more easily. So I look at it as, like, you probably hear the term horizontally scaling when it comes to things like ads. Usually what that's referring to is, instead of just increasing the budget on a current audience, you're going to go and you're going to find some new audiences and you're going to horizontally scale. You're going to reach new people. I take that same concept when I think about products. So you're going to horizontally scale your products. If your customers are already buying one thing from you, then by adding something new, you're allowing them to not just continuously buy the same thing that they already have too many of or don't need more of. You're now offering them something else that they can justify in their mind because it's different than the other things and they need it for whatever reason. So by having this horizontal scaling for products, not only is it going to hopefully get your existing customers to rebuy, but maybe even open up some doors for some slightly different customers that are similar, slightly different niches type of thing. So it should change everything for your business. But of course, you might need to make some adjustments on the product along the way as things come back, as feedback comes in from those customers. You might want to make some adjustments because nothing is going to tell you that information like several thousand customers who are experiencing those products.
Yeah, I completely agree. And whether you want to measure that as a profit per customer, customer lifetime value metric, there's always an easy way to tell, did we get the same people to buy more, which then just makes your marketing more effective, your customer support more effective, like all of the functions of your business, you can just scale because you're making more revenue on top of what should essentially be some sort of eventually flat costs to the business, which is how you just rack up a lot of profit. The three things, though, that I would think of how this is going to fundamentally change your business. First and foremost, it's going to change your brand. So a lot, especially if you're on that, so if you're one or two products and you're scaling really, really quickly, you've probably become associated as the company that sells X product with your unique value proposition. The really tough change that you just have to make top to bottom in the company is now we're going after this part of a person's life. We're not just this great product. And that change of positioning, of branding, of messaging is really, really hard, that you need to spend a lot of time deeply thinking through and really understand and know your customers to really understand that. And I think I would say as part two, but is very related, is you need to basically change your entire funnel, right? Like, especially if you're scaling one product or one product category really, really quickly and you get into another one, it's no longer about optimizing the way that people buy X product. You now need to figure out how to get the product introduction and get people to view both and make a decision without losing the, oh no, I don't know which one I want to buy. So also really think about when you introduce a new product, how is it different? Do you need to introduce a product comparison section of your site? Like, why, really think through, if people are going to come to buy my first product, why are they coming to buy my second product also? And if you're really good at this, the second product makes it easier to sell the first product because them together is a 1 + 1 + 3. And that goes to your top of funnel ads all the way through your post-purchase follow-up, and really thinking through all of that and really thinking through what are the sales mechanics to get someone to buy. The third major thing that you just need to think about is you're splitting all of your resources now. Your marketing budget is split. Your financial inventory budget is split. What your customer support team needs to know to support that product is split. Your real estate on site, same thing. And so really being methodical and thinking through that, like I see I kind of blame the dropshipper community for this, but I really see like too many people just toss up a product on site, think it's going to add X percent of revenue to their business, and it implodes their business because they don't know how to sell both of those things at the same time. And that's why you've kind of noticed us gravitate to the same theme of like, always make sure that you can sell them together, not that you have to sell two things independently. I think is so important, because if you can do that well, and if you can continue to stack these things on top of each other, you get this beautiful system where when you acquire new customers, you can actually do it at a higher CAC, because now your AOV is so much higher, because 2 years ago when you were trying to get somebody to buy a $50 item and you were spending $10 to $15 in marketing to get them to do that, your 4 or 5 items that make sense together can get your AOV up into the 100, 150, and now your CAC can be somewhere around 40 to 50. And so it really changes the fundamental way that your business works. But it's so important to get this right, because the company that do get it right become enduring brands and can just scale to 7, 8, 9, 10 figures in GMV. I mean, think about Apple is doing this in their multi-trillion-dollar business. And so it's really important to master this and get this right, because this is how your business grows over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one great example that I'd like to give is a company called BlendJet. Probably a lot of listeners have heard of them, probably just seen their ads because they run a ton of ads on Facebook. And this is a product that is pretty much a one-off product. I think my wife actually bought one. And you don't really need 2 of them. The only way you're buying a second one is if you're gifting it to someone. I've noticed over the last few months, I don't watch them very closely, but I've noticed that they started introducing, I'm not sure if it's supplements, but it's like little packets where they're basically selling smoothie related products to use in your BlendJet. So now they're tacking on this new product. It fits perfectly with their audience that are already buying from them. Is it going to be their number one driver? Probably not, but it allows them to have a reason to follow up with their customers that have already paid to acquire. They already have their contact information. It's similar to what they're already using. So why not offer it? It seems like it's working well for them. I don't have that specific information, but if anybody from BlendJet does listen to this, please reach out to me.
Thanks for listening to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with another e-commerce marketer. And always let us know what you think down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you're looking for cutting edge tactics and the resources that we rely on to run our businesses, sign up for our newsletter. We'll include a link down below. As always, stay confident, connect with your customers, and keep crushing it.